Hello everyone, today's poem is Xiaoya, 鸿雁, a Xiaoya poem from the Book of Songs. The title 鸿雁 means goose. The character 鸿 refers to the goose of bigger size, and yan refers to the type of goose with normal or smaller size. Anyhow, they referring to the goose. And this title was also used as the title for the collection of 10. So we have 鹿鸣之时南有家喻之时. So in the Xiaoya poems, every 10 poems was given a name as a collection, a sub-collection, or a paper roll might be. And 鸿雁 is the first poem in 鸿雁之时, the collection of 鸿雁, 10 poems of 鸿雁之时. So that's how the collection name came from. Normally, it's from the first poem in that collection. Sometimes you might encounter a situation or a book that this poem was categorized into 同工之时, 10 poems collection of 同工. So that because roughly 1,000 years ago before today, a very famous scholar in the Song dynasty, Zhou, he rearranged those collections and gave them new names. But I don't like the way he did that. So I still stick to the very original collections, 鸿雁之时. Chinese are quite familiar with goose since very early time, at least since the Chinese civilization starts. The goose fly to the South China when the autumn starts, and it will fly back to North China or even to Siberia in the springtime. So this is a very, very clear and outstanding signals for everyone that spring comes. So it's the time to start your work in the farming field. And when the goose is flying to the south, the winter is about coming. You better finish all your work and duties and prepare enough foods and fix your houses to spend the whole winter. You could find goose everywhere in classic Chinese literature. It might describe the characteristics of goose and paralleled that character to human. For example, the goose are very loyal to the other significance. So the Chinese know it in very, very early time. So if the one of the goose couples died for some reason, the other goose very likely will suicide. So the Chinese are very, very familiar with this story. And in the Yuan dynasty, Jin dynasty, Yuan Haowen has a very, very famous poem, 雁丘词. So he encountered such a case, and he buried the suicide goose, and he write a poem, 问世间情为何物，直教生死相许. So that's one of the part or aspects of the goose to Chinese. And the other hand, or in most cases, the goose is a signal of the season, the autumn, either autumn or spring. So it would be mentioned when you see someone mention the goose in the poems, you most likely he's telling, oh, it's spring or it's autumn's time. And until the Tang and Song dynasty, the goose extended its metaphor not only as season, and it's sort of the homeward bound, because the Chinese think when the autumns come, they fly to the South China, so they are thought of the homeward bound, and very likely the soldiers, the generals in the frontier areas, in the battlefield, normally in most of the time through the Chinese history is in the north boundary of the North China. So the soldier and the generals, when they saw the goose is flying over to south above their head, they feel homesick. So basically, that's the goose for Chinese, and that's the goose appeared in the classic Chinese literature. Okay, let's get to the first goose poem in the Chinese history. It's a very simple poem with typical 3 paragraphs, like most of the poems in the States Wind. 鸿雁于飞，簌簌其羽。The geese are flying. They blow their wings of the sound 簌簌. So 簌簌 is the sound simulation to describe the sound when the goose blow their wings. Okay, let's continue. 之子于征，劬劳于野。之子, so a noble person that living his home, so he has some duties and is going out somewhere. So that's 之子 means. 于征 is very clear. He's in a march. So general explanation is this poem is about a salvation project. So the king, one of the king in the West Zhou dynasty, he was in a time of chaos. So he endeavored himself to establish new towns, to summon all the people who are fleeing or who is hideaways, and restore the social order, restore the towns. So he has done a lot of the good deed for the people. But anyhow, I don't think that way, because this character is one of the reasons. 征 means much, and it has a very, very strong hint on the military purpose. So roughly a little more than 20 poems has this character 征 in the Book of Songs, and every poem basically indicate it's a war, or this poem is about a war. The only exception poem is 车公, which is about a hunting game. But for the Zhou people, the hunting game and war is same thing. 在祀在戎，国之大事，在祀在戎。The two main things for a country, for a king, is pray. The first thing is pray to the Lord, to the ancestors. The second thing is 戎. 戎 means hunting game and war. They are same thing. So that's why this poem shouldn't be an exception. So all the poems in the Book of Songs with this character, 征, it means either a war or a hunting game. Okay, let's get back to the poem. 之子于征，劬劳于野. So the Lord is on a march, and he is so busy and so tiresome in the wild. 劬劳, they means the people is working so hard and so tiresome. So here also indicates or implies something, either a hunting game or a war, because Ye is a far, far away place from their town, from their home. 原籍今人哀此鳏寡. When the Lord come to this place and saw a bunch of poor old people, and he feels so sad and sorry for those old people who might lost their couples. So let me get to the word first. 原 means at, 籍 is approach. So it means the Lord is at his place, or he walk around in the camps. He find a lot of the old people. 今 at very beginning, it means a people with a stick. So that's the old people. It's too old. He need a stick in his hand to walk around. And also the meaning extend to describe some poor people or humble people. So 原籍今人, it means basically means the Lord saw some poor old people in his camp. I think the military camp, of course. 哀疾鳏寡. 鳏 means a husband lost his wife, so he is alone. 寡 means a wife lost his husband, so she is alone. So the last sentence means the Lord feels so sad toward those people who lost their husband or who lost their wife. So there's a little bit confusion why he mentioned both the husband or wife, because in the military campus there's no female persons. So I think this is a quite genius writing, because in his military camp, the people still alive. There's a bunch of people are so old, but they still need to serve in the army. And the Lord should know some of his old soldiers has lost their wives back in home because the husband was serving in the army for a long, long time. Thus made the family back getting poor, and their wife died earlier. And of course, the Lord are quite aware some soldiers has died in the battlefield. Thus, he know that their wives back at home became a widow, 鳏寡. So that's why the sentence mentioned the widow and the husband lost their wives. So that's the two terms, 哀此鳏寡. So just with 鳏寡, actually the poet linked the battlefield with the family together, and also linked the live people with the dead people together. So it's a very, very talented writing. Okay, the second paragraph. 鸿雁于飞，集于中泽. The geese are flying, and at the night time they land on the marsh. 泽 means marsh. So this is a very accurate and vivid description. The geese flying to the South China or North China, it's not they didn't made it just by one trip. Every night they will land on a marsh normally, and this is a very, very normal situation for everybody. You can, if you are approach a marsh, a piece of land of marsh, in the autumn's time, it's quite easily you will see a lot of a herd of geese or sort of the birds. And from this description, it's very likely is the autumn's time. This poem is describing the autumn's time. From my own experience, that in the spring's time, it's really hard. I never noticed that a herd of geese that staying in a marsh at the night time. It's a very, I even cannot thought about how does it like, but in the autumn's time it's quite easily for you to see that sense. If you approach a wetland, a marsh, a piece of land of marsh, it's a very normal situation. The autumn season also explained the character Zhou in the first paragraph, the military march, because in the code of conduct of Zhou, the Lord could only start a war in the autumn season. So the autumn season was always associated with two things. The first thing first, the harvest. The second, a war. So basically that's the autumn means for the Zhou people. Okay, let's continue. 之子于园，百堵皆作. The Lord comes to the city walls, and 100 walls has been done. The character yuan means the city wall, the low city wall. Normally it's for the purpose of defense. Du is a measure word. It means a piece of wall with roughly 3 meters high and 3 meters wide. So Baidu, it means roughly 300 meters city wall has been built. 虽则劬劳，其咎安宅. Even though we are such tiresome, busysome, with such a hard work, so at last, finally, can we settle down ourselves at this house? 安宅 means 安于宅, so could settle down ourselves in this house. So there's a little bit confusion still. So let's review the whole paragraph, the second paragraph. So the first pair of sentences, the poet, the Lord, saw the geese. They settled down temporarily in the marsh as midway to the South China. So this is the first pair of sentences. The geese are settled down temporarily. Remember that. And then the Lord moved his eyesight, looked to something around him. Okay, my soldiers, they are building the city walls, and the 300 meters city wall has been built. And it's such a hard work, such a tiresome work. We have made all these city walls, but is that to say sometime at last we could settle down here? It's with a very, very strong doubt, a question to himself. So as far as we refers to the first pair of sentence, the geese, we know that this place is a temporal place. So far, per the Lord, sort of, he have no idea how long and how safe they could stay here. So on the surface, there's nothing associated with war, right? So let's refer one of the poem. I had a video of it, of course. Still in Xiaoya, 出车, the poem is Xiaoya 出车. They have the sentence 天子命我成笔数方. So this whole poem is about a war with the Xianyun, the nomad race in the North China. And there's a battles described, and also it is described that the king of Zhou ordered the lord or the general to build a city at the place of Shuofang. So this is part of the war, to build a city. I think the city is for the purpose to defense, or just like the Great War in the later generations, to use that fortress, to use that city to as a defense, as a fortress to against the nomad. So with such background, let's review the second paragraph again. So the Lord, the general, he lead an army somewhere far, far away from their home, and he saw the geese staying on the marsh on their midway to South China. And he ordered his soldiers to build a city, and the city walls are as long as 300 meters. And with all this hard work has been done, but he still wondered about this wall or this defense facility. Is it good enough to defend themselves from their enemies? Or in other words, how long I would stay here, or how long this city wall and our soldier could defend ourselves from the enemies. So in this way, the first paragraph and second paragraph, they all make their sense. The first paragraph describes they are on their military march to a very, very far from place, a wild place. And the miserable, the hard living, or even some of the battles with the enemies, a lot of the old soldiers died. So this made the Lord, the general, feels so sad. On one hand, it's so sad to thought about those dead soldiers, but how sad would their wives be back in their home? On the other hand, for those soldiers still alive, some of them, their wives has died back in home. So how sad would those soldiers with their wife dead already? And the second paragraph basically said, gave us more details of this long march, and finally they settled down somewhere, like the geese settled down at night time in the marsh. And they built city, they built a fortress, but the Lord has so many doubts, and he don't know what is the end of this war. If this fortress, this city, is good enough to defend themselves from their enemies. So basically, the first two paragraphs is all about the war, the uncertainty war, and his sadness toward the lost lives of his people. The third paragraph. 鸿雁于飞，哀鸣嗷嗷. The geese are flying in the air. The bird songs are so sad. 哀鸣 the geese sings sadly. Ao ao is the sound simulation words. 为此哲人为我劬劳. This man with wisdom, with intelligence, he take me as the one that has done a very, very difficult, very hard job. I has done such an exhausting job. 为彼愚人为我宣教. That man with foolishness, he take me as the man bragging with proud and arrogant. So this is a very interesting ending of this poem. The poet or the Lord who write this poem gave us readers a very interesting question of choice. Are you agree with those wise men, or are you agree with those foolish men? Anyhow, to be fair, the wise man, the foolish man are the opinions by the poet, by this Lord. It's not necessary to be a real wise man, a real foolish man. That's the emotion or feelings by this poet. Anyhow, the situation is quite clear. The Lord has done such a difficult and hard job in the battlefield, build the fortress to defend the enemies. Anyhow, it looks like the war didn't finish yet. They are still in the middle of a war, so there's no clear result, and that's was reflected from the second paragraph. 祈究安宅, is that to say I can settle down here for a long time. So nobody knows the result of that war, still in the middle. So during the middle, the people of this state, or if it's a war by the king of Zhou, so that's the people of the Zhou country. Part of people recognize the hard work has been done by this poet, by the Lord, and part of the people, they don't agree with the poet, with this Lord, and they think him as bragging, as a very too arrogant, because you didn't win this war yet, and so many people has died, and everybody is getting poor and poor. So from this poem, actually, we can feel the reality, the poem in the Book of Songs. The Zhou people, they talk directly, and they just get to the point. No matter is talking to a king, to a prestigious lord, to a general, the general of the army. They just talk their opinion directly and get to the point. So just imagine if we are writing a poem or a story about a war today. It's not like such complex and real at this poem. It looks like the poet, the general, this lord, he has tried his best. He has done his best to serve the public interest, to defeat the enemies, and he feels the sadness of his people, but he was still be blamed by a lot of his people. And that's the complexity of the real life. The people always have different angles. People have different aspects. The people have different thinkings. You can never please everybody, even you are try your best, do your best to serve the public interest. You don't do anything for your own private interest. You are still blamed by someone. Okay, that's for today. Bye-bye.